You have spent months growing this product. Don't let it turn to dust. You're here with Mark Batwell on Perfect Gardens TV. Let's go ahead and get into it. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't checked out our monthly membership, for as little as $2.99, your questions get bumped to the top. We also have an additional silver and gold war chest for the right for free speech to be able to give you open and honest reviews. Please go ahead and check them out if you're interested. So equipment you're going to need dry nets, string. When I say string, it might be wire, it might be fish nets. It's be creative through this process of hanging your material. Just like how I showed you, all they're using was the plastic trellis nets, not the string trellis nets, the plastic, because of humidity buildup. You don't want mold to build up in the cotton trellis net type thought process. You're going to need black nitro gloves or latex gloves. You're going to need ethanol alcohol and rags because you're going to want to keep all your material clean. Your scissors, your machine, you're going to want to make sure this stuff is clean on a daily basis, because as it gets all gummied up, it's going to slow down all the trimmers, and it's going to only cost you and your operation more money. You're going to need dehumidifiers. You might need humidifiers depending upon where you live, because your product's might be drying out too fast. And if it dries out too fast, you might actually trap more moisture in the center of that flower, which later down the road will begin to cause mold in the center of that flower. And we've all seen it, right? You crack it open and it's brown in the center, but it's green on the outside, and we've seen it before, right? That's because water molecules get trapped in the center because the outside dries out too fast and it begins to oxidize, right, in the center. That's why it's really important that you want this material to dry from the inside out. If you have a larger operation, you might want to purchase a machine trimmer. You're going to want to have proper power hookups. If you're outside guerrilla growing, you're going to want to make sure to have your generator. You're going to probably want to do a tune-up on that generator and make sure that you have an area to properly store the fuel so it's not a fire hazard. You're going to want safe working conditions, safety goggles, extra blades for the machines, extra scissors for the trimmers. You don't want to be running down to the hydro store looking for more scissors because some broke. It always happens. You're going to want heavy-duty black trash bags, or you're going to want containers, or for smaller growers, you're going to want paper bags to slow down the curing, to create a smaller area so the moisture isn't really being sucked away quickly. If you have the patience to listen to this entire audio, I'm going to be seeding thoughts that, dependent upon your operation and how you do things, it could make a night and day difference. You're going to need Mylar bags. And again, trash bags, Mylar bags, they're doing the similar thing, right? They're doing the in portion of the curing, and once again, you might start with the open air because you're trying to cure it down, and then you might go into a paper bag, or depending if you have a large scale operation, you might want to go into a cardboard box. You're going to need turkey bags, two-way humidipacks, tables, chairs, radio, water, snacks, bathrooms, and showers. Again, depend upon the size of your operation. Your curing room, you're going to want it dark. You're going to want a cool, dark, between 65 and 75 degree room, maybe even cooler down to 60 degrees. Again, you're going to tune in your curing room and your storage room. Your curing room actually might end up turning into your long-term storage room. So understand that if you are curing in a uninsulated room or a large warehouse and you're curing in that operation, but there's no insulation, that might not be the place where you want to store your biomass, because it's going to dry out all your material and it's going to turn it to dust. So you have to take into consideration that all these different places, right? There's a portion where you're going to want to dry your material out and the initial cutting down and dry it out because you want to go to mold or you want to go to market. Then you're going to have your slowing down of the curing. That's probably going to be between day 7 and day 21. That might go into a small paper bag, something where it's, I don't know, it's just something along those lines where it's just going to be a smaller environment, so all the moisture isn't seeping out as quickly. And then your third stage is going to be your long-term curing, more of like your burping for the first couple weeks, and then after that you're going to actually be storing it away where your environment's just going to stay almost exactly the same. You're going to seal it up for a few months. You're not going to be concerned about it breaking down because you're taking into consideration a higher nitrogen-rich environment. Once again, very important thing, stable, consistent environment, okay? Remember, you want these flowers to dry from the inside out, and that takes a slower curing process. You dry it too fast, moisture is going to get caught in the center, and then you might run the risk of a degradation of the center of that flower, which you won't even see the problem. And then obviously, you're looking for the classic stem to break, right? From here, if you have that equipment and you have a curing room with these basic needs, you're going to do a good job. Okay, so let's go in further though, what we've been talking about around the wet versus dry, and kind of get more in depth around the psychology of this whole stuff. The curing process starts when you plant the seed to when the end consumer actually uses your product, right? And I'm talking about brand building and caring about your product all the way up to the point where the end consumer uses it and they're like, wow. And they don't realize that that product was grown a year ago. So like I said, if you do a good curing job, your material should be just as good, if not better, a year later after you harvested it. So the first thing I do is I decide if I'm going to do a wet trim or a dry trim. The reason why these things are important is because of just how the entire operation in your drying room and your storage of your material is set up. It just is completely different in the philosophy. If you're doing a wet trim, again, the most important thing on a wet trim is the scheduling of your employees. Your employees could be your wife, it could be your grandma, it could be your mom. It doesn't matter who it is. You have to schedule it with them. They have to make sure to understand that you need them there on time for a certain amount of hours to do a certain amount of workload. If you have to pay a little extra for trustworthy, reliable people that are going to do their job, not go talk about what they're doing to all their neighbors and friends, obviously unless you want that, I highly recommend to do so. If you're going to purchase machines, make sure to purchase the machines at least a month ahead of time, okay? Because you're going to need the proper hookup. It could be needing 220 or 3-phase, but these machines have to be cleaned on a daily basis if you want this operation to be kicking off really well. Once again, your generator and fuel, you want to make sure to have enough so that your machine isn't shutting down and your crew of 20 people aren't just sitting there and all of the biomass after they have cut it off the plant is just wilting, right? Because you have to run down to the gas station that might be 10, 15 miles away or down the mountain or wherever you're coming from, and then coming back, and it ends up being an hour and a half long mission to just get gas. So again, you want to think ahead. You want to create a very disciplined, organized, light stress environment for people to work, and you get the most productivity out of them. I would set up a shaded area. If you have the ability to have a cold room or like an air conditioned room where your flour, and listen, your air conditioned room is different from your employees wherever they're at, and every operation is different from outdoor operations. If you have an outdoor operation, do something to improve it, right? Put a shade cloth over, put your work environment underneath, not maybe underneath trees, get a tent. You know, if you have the ability to put up a generator, bring in some type of refrigeration unit to keep your biomass that you cut off the plant cool and crispy and easier for the trimmers to trim if you're doing a wet trim. Or easier to go through the machines, because it's really important that these machines stay cool. There's sometimes just basic friction that's happened, and through this basic friction of running the biomass through this material, the oil, right? The oil's on the outside of these plants. It's going to melt. And when it begins to melt, that's where it begins to cake up on the machines. And if the warmer those machines are, the more that's going to cake up on these machines, or the more that's going to build up. That's why, again, I like to build my techniques around dry trimming, not wet trimming, because I think there's more degradation that happens on the wet than the dry. But a lot of this industry has embraced the wet trimming thought process because they don't have good growing practices. And so I think hopefully as they take more time to think about this and they get more systematic, and the operations and the flow of the product just begins to flow a little more stable, hopefully they start to take a little more time to thinking about the dry curing techniques versus the wet curing. I would highly recommend to start trimming before the sun rises. Anyone that does outdoor trimming knows that right when you cut that plant off, outdoor or indoor, it doesn't matter. When you cut that plant off, you have roughly 15 to 20 minutes for that flower to start to wilt on you, right? And as the plant starts to wilt on you, it gets harder and harder to trim that material. Once again, that's why I like the dry trimming. I actually like it when it creates a cocoon experience. And I showed you this on some of these other pictures. We already talked about this. If you're using hand trimmers or machines, you got to clean this material every single day. If you have a team of people trimming, you got to have someone every 20 minutes, every hour, walking around, cleaning all the blades off everyone, resharpening all the blades so that it's keeping all of your trimmers going at a fast pace throughout the day. This is going to keep your production at a very nice standard. And last but not least, we talked about it. Consider using a refrigeration system of some level, or just be really systematic. As you cut the flower, you have about 15 to 20 minutes before that flower starts to wilt. So if you're doing a wet trimming, you really need to be having a runner in your garden, cutting and looking for the largest, densest, hardest flowers. You're cherry picking it, and then you're bringing a bin of biomass to your trimmers, and they're trimming it, and then a new bin is coming 15-20 minutes later, while that other bin of biomass has already been trimmed and taken away. And you can imagine one runner, you have a table of trimmers trimming the biomass, and then you have one guy in the drying room stacking all the biomass. And your operation really is like an accordion, or your lungs. It's a breathing experience. It's expanding and contracting through the entire day. And you might end up needing a few pickers in the day. Then you might end up needing less pickers and more people trimming in the middle of the day. And you might end up needing one person in the drying room throughout the day. But let's say at the back end of the day, you might end up needing two people in the drying room, stacking the biomass and moving it around. Because when once again, you're dealing with a large operation, you're dealing with this is your end product, right? You've spent months of your life growing this product, and it's kind of like expanded out, from whether you're growing in a 3x3 or 500 acres, you've expanded all your energy and all of the money in your investment into a 500 acre grow. Now you're harvesting it, and you're condensing it all down into maybe 100 foot by 100 foot storage, or maybe it's your garage, and you're condensing it down to 3 by 3 square feet of space or something, because all your materials in there. And then after you trim it, you then condense that down to a few pounds, right? Or, all to a smaller material. And then other people are going to condense it down to an oil. So in my opinion, what you're doing is you're condensing your value down to a smaller and smaller amount. So as it gets smaller and smaller, you have to be more considerate, because more of your money and your hard-earned energy is stored in a smaller amount. And you spill it on the ground, oh man, you just dumped your oil. I've been to a couple situations where the machines were a little hot, and the oil ended up actually bubbling over the machine and losing $5,000 of material in a matter of 20 minutes, because just one small mistake. It's a very intense process that, if thought about properly, it can actually make a 9-day difference in your overall grow. And if you don't think about it, it can turn your product to dust. Thanks so much. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great grow, everyone. The chlorophyll molecule, the green that you see on the plant, this is the one magnesium right here in the center, and all this other stuff is bound to that magnesium molecule. And then from there, that chlorophyll, all these other minerals in some way have a relationship to the chlorophyll, okay?